Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! In the mirror's reflection, a startling transformation revealed a new person. Gone were the features of a weary corporate climber. Instead, a fresh visage emerged with carefully applied makeup and a tailored ensemble. It was as if a new individual had emerged from the confines of that mirror, ready to take on the world, or at least a crucial business meeting. "This is madness," they whispered, fingers trailing over the sleek fabric of the formal attire. The whispered protest seemed to echo in the quiet room. How did I end up like this? That morning, the sun rose over the city, marking the beginning of a fateful Tuesday. Inside the offices of, company name, Mr. I can have everything prepared by 2. Richard had cleared his throat, his discomfort palpable. There's something else. Their new VP, Patricia Westfield, she's the founder's daughter, and she has specific requirements for the agencies she works with. Jay remembered raising an eyebrow. Requirements? She only works with female representatives. Richard had winced as he said it. Something about past experiences with male-dominated agencies. She's made it clear that she'll only discuss contract renewal with a woman. So, assign Karen or Melissa from Digital, Jay had suggested, naming the 2 most senior women in the department. Karen's on maternity leave, and Melissa is in Seattle until Friday. Richard had run a hand through his thinning hair. Everyone else who knows the account is either out sick, on vacation, or male. The realization of where the conversation was heading had hit Jay like a truck. No, absolutely not. Jay, this is a $3 million account. We can't afford to lose it. You want me to pretend to be a woman? Are you serious? Richard had leaned forward. Just for one meeting. 3 hours, tops. My wife can help with the details. We'll introduce you as Madison, a new account executive. You know this client better than anyone else here. Jay had paced the office, torn between professional dedication and personal dignity. This is completely inappropriate. Why not just tell them the truth? Because Patricia Westfield has walked away from 3 agencies in the past year for failing to meet her requirements. This account represents 15% of our annual revenue. After 20 minutes of debate, professional ambition had won out. Jay had reluctantly agreed, with the stipulation that only Richard and his wife would know about the deception. Now, 3 hours later, here he stood in Richard's home, transformed. You look perfect, Christine Harrington said, stepping back to admire her handiwork. She adjusted the auburn wig she'd styled in loose waves that fell just past Jay's shoulders. That color suits your complexion beautifully. Jay shifted uncomfortably in the red heels that pinched his toes. I feel ridiculous. Nonsense, Christine countered, applying a final touch of mascara to Jay's eyelashes. You look professional and polished. Just remember to take smaller steps in that skirt, keep your knees together when you sit, and don't fidget with the wig. Richard checked his watch. We should head out. The meeting's in 45 minutes. The drive to the office felt surreal. Jay sat in the back seat, practicing a higher vocal register while Richard rehearsed their introduction story. Remember, you're Madison Taylor, recently transferred from our Boston office. You've been briefed on the Westfield account and are taking point because of your experience with similar clients. Jay nodded, his mouth dry. And if she asks specific questions about Boston? Keep it vague. You were there briefly, working remotely most of the time. The familiar office building loomed ahead, suddenly feeling like foreign territory. Richard parked in his reserved spot, then turned to face Jay. Ready? a deep breath. As I'll ever be. Walking through the parking garage required intense concentration. Each step in the red heels demanded attention to balance and posture. Christine had coached him on walking from the hips, whatever that meant. Jay focused on not tripping while maintaining what he hoped was a feminine gait. Richard led them through the service entrance and up the executive elevator, avoiding curious eyes in the main lobby. The conference room had been prepared with refreshments, presentation materials, and strategically dimmed lighting that would be flattering without being too obvious.
"She'll be here in 20 minutes,
Richard said, checking his phone.
"Let's review the presentation one more time."
Jay took a seat, remembering Christine's advice about keeping his knees together. The skirt felt restrictive, the pantyhose strange against his freshly shaved legs. Yet there was something oddly comfortable about the outfit. The way the fabric draped, the professional silhouette it created.
"You look natural,"
Richard observed, seemingly surprised.
"If I didn't know better."
"Let's just get through this," Jay interrupted, uncomfortable with the scrutiny. The intercom buzzed, and the receptionist's voice announced Patricia Westfield's arrival. Jay's heart hammered against his ribs as he stood, smoothing his skirt and checking that the wig was secure. Richard squeezed his shoulder.
"You've got this."
The door opened, and a tall woman with a sharp bob and sharper eyes entered. She carried a sleek leather portfolio and exuded confidence in her charcoal pantsuit.
"Ms. Westfield,"
Richard stepped forward, hand extended.
"Thank you for making time in your schedule. I'm Richard Harrington, and this is Madison Taylor, who'll be your primary contact for the campaign moving forward."
Jay extended his hand, consciously softening his grip.
"It's a pleasure to meet you, Ms. Westfield."
Patricia's handshake was firm, her assessment quick but thorough.
"Likewise. I understand you've been briefed on our requirements?"
"Completely," Jay replied in the practiced higher register that felt strange in his throat.
"I've prepared a comprehensive overview of our strategy for the next quarter, with particular attention to the concerns you raised about market penetration in the Southwest region."
Something in Patricia's expression shifted, a slight relaxation around the eyes, perhaps approval.
"Excellent. Let's begin."
The meeting proceeded with surprising smoothness. Jay presented the marketing strategy, fielded questions, and negotiated terms with the competence he always brought to client meetings. The only difference was the costume, except it began feeling less like a costume with each passing minute. Patricia proved to be direct, knowledgeable, and unexpectedly reasonable. Her reputation for being difficult seemed exaggerated, or perhaps it was just that she responded well to Madison's, approach. "These demographic projections are impressive," Patricia noted, examining a chart. "Most agencies overlook the purchasing power of women in this age bracket."
"I've found that's a common blind spot,"
Jay replied, finding it easier to stay in character as the meeting progressed.
"We've developed specific messaging that addresses their priorities without resorting to outdated stereotypes."
Patricia nodded approvingly. "Refreshing to hear. The last 3 agencies tried to sell me on pink packaging and emotional appeals." The meeting extended beyond the planned hour as Patricia delved deeper into the strategy. Jay forgot about the uncomfortable shoes and the wig. He forgot about pretending to be someone else. He simply became Madison. Competent, insightful, and apparently exactly what Patricia Westfield had been looking for in an agency representative. "I think we've covered everything," Patricia finally said, closing her portfolio. "I'm satisfied with the direction. Let's move forward with implementation." Richard couldn't hide his relief.
"Wonderful. We'll have the revised contract to you by tomorrow.
Send it directly to Madison, Patricia instructed. I'd like her to continue as my point of contact. Jay felt a flutter of panic, but maintained his composure.
Of course. I'll review it personally before sending it on to you.
After handshakes and promises of follow-up meetings, Patricia departed. The moment the door closed, Richard collapsed into a chair with an explosive sigh.
That was incredible, he said, grinning widely. She never renews on the first meeting. Never.
Jay sank into a chair, suddenly aware again of the restrictive clothing, the wig, the makeup.
She wants me, Madison, to be her ongoing contact.
Richard's excitement dimmed slightly.
We'll figure something out. Maybe we can hire someone. Have you transitioned the account? Transition?
Jay repeated, the word hanging in the air with unexpected weight.
Poor choice of words.
Richard amended quickly.
Look, we'll solve that problem tomorrow. Today, we celebrate. You saved a $3 million account.
Jay nodded absently, staring at his reflection in the darkened window. The auburn hair framed a face he barely recognized, yet somehow it didn't feel entirely foreign.
I need to change, he said finally. Can we go back to your place? I can't exactly walk through the office like this. Of course. Let me check that the hall is clear.
The return to Richard's house was quiet. Jay lost in thought as suburban neighborhoods rolled past the car windows. Christine greeted them with eager questions about the meeting, celebrating their success with offers of coffee and congratulations. In the guest bathroom, Jay slowly removed the artifacts of Madison, the wig, the makeup, the unfamiliar clothes. Each item removed should have felt like reclaiming his identity, yet something unexpected lingered. He stared at his bare face in the mirror, water dripping from where he'd washed away the foundation and mascara.
Everything okay in there?
Christine called through the door.
Fine,
Jay replied. His voice returned to its natural register.
Just taking my time.
He emerged in the borrowed clothes Richard had provided, jeans and a polo that felt strangely restrictive compared to the skirt and blouse. The weight of expectations seemed to settle back onto his shoulders with the masculine attire.
You were born for sales,
Richard said, handing him a cup of coffee.
Patricia texted me already. She's impressed with Madison and looking forward to working together.
Jay accepted the coffee with a nod.
What exactly is the plan here, Richard? I can't keep pretending to be a woman indefinitely.
Richard's expression turned serious.
I know. I'm thinking we hire someone, have you train them on the account, and make some excuse about Madison being reassigned. And in the meantime, one more meeting, maybe two, just until we find the right person.
Jay should have protested, should have drawn a line. Instead, he heard himself say,
Fine, but I want a bonus for this. A significant one. Absolutely, Richard agreed quickly. Whatever you think is fair.
That night, alone in his apartment, Jay dreamed of the meeting. Except in the dream, he wasn't pretending. He was Madison, confident and competent, commanding the room without the nagging fear of being discovered. He woke with a start at 3 a.m., unsettled by how natural it had felt. The next morning brought a flurry of emails, congratulations from Richard, the draft contract from legal, and, most concerningly, a direct message from Patricia Westfield requesting a coffee meeting with Madison the following day to discuss some additional ideas. Jay called Richard immediately.
She wants to meet Madison for coffee, tomorrow.
That's good, right? She's engaged with the account.
Richard, we need a real Madison. This can't continue.
A pause.
We're interviewing candidates, but it's going to take time to find someone with the right experience who can step in seamlessly. Just one coffee meeting, Jay. What's the harm? The harm, Jay thought but didn't say, was the strange comfort he'd found in Madison's skin, the ease with which he'd slipped into her persona, the reluctance he'd felt changing back. Fine. One coffee meeting. And so, the next day, Madison met Patricia at an upscale cafe downtown. Christine had provided another outfit, a burgundy wrap dress with three-quarter sleeves, more comfortable black heels, and the same auburn wig, now styled in a neat ponytail. This is becoming a habit, Jay had commented as Christine applied his makeup with expert hands. She'd given him a curious look. You seem more relaxed today. He hadn't responded, because the truth was uncomfortable. He was more relaxed. The anxiety he'd felt before the first meeting had been replaced with something else. Anticipation, perhaps. Curiosity about stepping back into Madison's life. The coffee meeting went even better than the office presentation. Without Richard present, conversation flowed naturally between Madison and Patricia. They discussed business, then career paths, then the challenges of being women in corporate environments. Jay found himself sharing observations he'd made, but never voiced, drawing from experiences of female colleagues who'd confided in him over the years. Exactly, Patricia agreed passionately after Madison described the subtle ways women's ideas were often appropriated in meetings. You get it. That's why I insist on working with women executives now. I'm tired of explaining these basic realities to men who pretend to listen but never really hear. Jay felt a pang of guilt at the deception, but also a strange sense of validation. He did understand, perhaps not from lived experience, but from close observation and genuine empathy. We should continue these conversations, Patricia said as they parted. It's refreshing to work with someone who understands both the business and the landscape we're navigating. One coffee meeting became a weekly tradition. One emergency appearance as Madison at a client dinner became regular strategy sessions. Richard's promised 1 or 2 meetings stretched into weeks, then a month. We're still interviewing, Richard insisted when Jay pressed about finding a replacement. But honestly, you've developed such a rapport with Patricia. Anyone else would be starting from scratch. The truth, which neither of them acknowledged directly, was that Jay had become exceptionally good at being Madison. The character had depth now, preferences, mannerisms, a distinctive voice. Colleagues who hadn't been told about the deception accepted Madison as a valued team member, including her in emails and seeking her input. At home, Jay found himself ordering clothes that matched Madison's style, not to wear, he told himself, but to have ready for the increasingly frequent occasions when he needed to transform. The auburn wig remained Christine's, but he studied how she styled it, learning to maintain its soft waves himself. 6 weeks after the first meeting, Jay realized with a start that he'd spent more work hours as Madison than as himself that week. The revelation came as he sat at his kitchen table on Friday evening, reviewing reports while absently touching the phantom weight of hair that wasn't there.
This has to stop,
he said aloud to his empty apartment.
It's gone too far.
He called Richard, prepared to issue an ultimatum, but the conversation took an unexpected turn.
I was just about to call you,
Richard said.
Westfield wants to feature Madison in their promotional materials.
Patricia says her insight has been invaluable to their rebranding effort. Richard, no, absolutely not. No photographs. That's what I told them. I said you, Madison, are private and don't do publicity, but they're offering to double the contract value if we make you available for their internal strategy sessions. The figure Richard named made Jay's objections die in his throat.
It would mean financial security, maybe even early retirement if he managed it properly.
How long?
He asked, finally.
6 months, maximum.
And you're still looking for a replacement?
Of course,
Richard assured him, though his tone lacked conviction. That weekend, Jay made a decision. If this charade was going to continue, he needed to be more efficient. The daily transformations were time-consuming. The constant switching between personas was exhausting. There had to be a better way. On Monday, he scheduled an appointment at an upscale salon, requesting a consultation for growing out a short haircut. By Wednesday, he had begun laser hair removal treatments to eliminate the stubborn facial hair that required thick layers of foundation to conceal. By Friday, he had scheduled a meeting with an endocrinologist, ostensibly to discuss hormone imbalances causing excessive testosterone. Richard noticed the changes gradually, the softening jawline, the growing hair, the subtle shifts in Jay's appearance even when dressed as himself. "Are you taking this method acting a bit far?" he asked one afternoon, concern evident in his voice. Jay shrugged. "It's more practical this way. Less time preparing, more time focused on work." "The client loves you, loves Madison," Richard corrected himself.
But don't lose yourself in the role, Jay.
The warning came too late. The boundaries between Jay and Madison had already blurred beyond recognition. In meetings as Jay, he caught himself using Madison's gestures, her speech patterns. At home, he no longer changed immediately out of Madison's clothes, finding them increasingly comfortable. 3 months into the arrangement, Patricia invited Madison to be her +1 at an industry awards dinner. It would be the most public appearance yet, a room full of people from across the marketing world, many of whom might recognize Jay Miller. "I can't do it," Jay told Richard. "Someone will recognize me." "You'd be surprised," Richard replied. "I introduced you to the Henderson team last week, and Mark Henderson has known you for 5 years. He didn't have a clue." It was true. The physical changes from the hormone therapy, combined with the growing expertise in presentation, had created a Madison who bore only a passing resemblance to Jay Miller. The auburn hair, now genuinely growing from his head rather than sitting atop it as a wig, framed a face that had softened in subtle but significant ways. The awards dinner proved to be a turning point. Dressed in an elegant black gown with subtle accessories, Madison commanded attention without seeking it. Patricia introduced her to industry leaders as the brilliant strategist who revolutionized our approach. Former colleagues who had worked with Jay for years shook Madison's hand without a flicker of recognition. Late in the evening, in a quiet moment at the bar, Patricia made a confession. "I need to tell you something," she said, her usual confidence tempered with unusual vulnerability. "When we first met, I was ready to cut ties with Harrington Marketing." "Really? But you seemed satisfied with our presentation?" "I was surprised by it," Patricia corrected. "My father insisted we give the agency one last chance, despite my objections. I expected the same old approaches, the same failure to understand our needs." She swirled her drink thoughtfully. "Instead, I found you, someone who actually listens, who sees the opportunities others miss. You've changed how I think about agency partnerships." The praise should have felt like victory. Instead, it landed with the weight of complicated truth. Patricia valued Madison, a person who, in some fundamental way, didn't exist. Or did she? That night, lying awake in bed, Jay confronted questions he'd been avoiding for months. Who was Madison, really? A character he played? An extension of himself? Or someone who had always existed beneath the surface, waiting for permission to emerge? The auburn hair splayed across his pillow was undeniably real. The changes to his body were becoming more pronounced each week. The comfort he felt moving through the world as Madison contrasted sharply with the increasing discomfort of trying to maintain Jay's existence. The next morning, he made a decision. Over breakfast, he composed an email to Richard, requesting a formal meeting. 3 hours later, seated across from his boss in the corner office where this journey had begun, he spoke words he'd been rehearsing all morning.
I can't keep living a double life,
he began.
It's affecting my health, my sense of self.
Richard nodded solemnly.
I understand. We've let this go on too long. I'll tell Patricia we're transitioning the account to someone else.
That's not what I'm saying. A deep breath. I want to transition, Richard, but not the account. Understanding dawned slowly on Richard's face. You mean, I want to become Madison, officially, permanently. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the soft ticking of the antique clock on Richard's bookshelf.
Are you sure this isn't just getting too deep into a role?
Richard finally asked.
This started as a temporary solution. It revealed something that was already there,
Jay corrected.
I've been happier, more confident, more myself these past months than I've ever been. This isn't about the client anymore. It's about me.
Richard leaned back, processing.
What are you asking for exactly? I want to transition openly, change my name legally, continue working here as Madison Taylor. There would be questions, explanations needed. We tell the truth, a version of it, that I've been transitioning privately while working remotely, and now I'm ready to be my authentic self professionally. No one needs to know about the original deception.
Richard considered this, fingers steepled beneath his chin.
And Patricia?
Eventually I'll tell her the full story, when the time is right. She values authenticity. She'll understand this is the most authentic choice I could make. The logistics were complicated but not insurmountable. HR was discreetly informed. Legal paperwork was filed. A narrative was crafted that would allow Madison Taylor to emerge officially while Jay Miller gradually faded from the company roster. 6 months after that first meeting with Patricia Westfield, Jay stood before the mirror in her apartment, preparing for another day. The auburn hair was styled in soft waves that framed her face naturally. The makeup was applied with practiced ease. The burgundy dress with black accents complemented her coloring perfectly. There was no transformation required this morning, no character to step into. Just Madison, preparing for work. Her phone chimed with a text from Patricia. Coffee before the presentation? I want to run some ideas by you. Madison smiled, typing a quick response. Absolutely. See you at 8. As she gathered her portfolio and keys, she caught a final glimpse of herself in the hallway mirror. Where once she'd seen a costume, a deception, she now saw only herself, the person she was always meant to be, revealed through the strangest of circumstances. The navy blue pencil skirt, white blouse, and red heels that had once felt like a disguise now hung in her closet as just another outfit option. The reluctant agreement that had set everything in motion had become the most authentic decision of her life. Madison locked her apartment door and stepped into the morning sunlight, moving forward with confidence into a future entirely her own.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!